It's 12 o'clock, it's Monday, and welcome to the Dr. Tech Show. By the miracle of video and the internet, we are coming to you in a recorded version. We're coming to you from the past. What's it like in the future? In the present, here in Huddersfield, it is very hot. I'm sat here in my attic room with a fan on, which I'm hoping isn't causing too much noise and distraction. But it is very, very hot here in Huddersfield. I suspect it's not quite as hot today when you're watching this. But anyway, what's it like in Birmingham, Pauline?
Well, as usual in Birmingham, it's very sunny and people are out celebrating in the streets and sunbathing. So yeah, usual Birmingham weather.
And what's Orkney like, Swain?
Usual Orkney weather, bright yet cool.
Okay, well, it's over 30 degrees where I am, and I'm actually, as I'm up in the attic at the top of the house, I think it's probably hotter than that.
I hope you've got oxygen on standby. Well,
I've got a fan blowing in my face. I'm just hoping it's not hitting the microphone. But anyway, so here we are. There's a reason why we've recorded this week's show and we're not going out live, and we'll come on to that soon. But before we do that, Pauline, you've got some news for us.
Yes, well, we are celebrating South Asian Heritage Month at the moment, which started on the 18th of July and runs until the 17th of August. And this celebration seeks to commemorate, mark, and celebrate South Asian cultures, histories, particularly the intertwined histories of the UK and South Asian communities and how they're present throughout the UK. And the month began on the 18th of July, which is the date that the Indian Independence Act 1947 gained royal assent, and it ends on the 17th of August, which is Partition Commemoration Day. And at this time, we're also celebrating what is often called Smaller Eid, Eid al-Adha, and people are out celebrating, meeting their friends, wearing new clothes, and generally having a good time, and it's great to see.
It is. So Eid Mubarak to all our Muslim viewers. I hope you're enjoying it, and I hope you're enjoying it safely and socially distanced, because as you may know, if you live where I live, then we had new restrictions imposed on us because of COVID-19 at midnight last night, which have probably interfered with a lot of people's Eid celebrations. So if you're one of those people, you have my greatest sympathy. But it's not a nice thing to happen at the very last minute, but don't let that spoil your celebrations. So Eid Mubarak to everybody who is celebrating. So well, thank you for that, Pauline. And anyway, so on to the reason why we are talking to you from the past and not from Monday. When we first started Dr. Tech, I put a call out for people to tell us their stories about people getting online for the first time. It was a key part of the reason for forming the Dr. Tech show. And somebody called Jane Binnion got in touch and said, well, I've got a whole group. Jane runs a community interest company based in Lancaster called the Growing Club, which is a training and mentoring organisation that she trains and mentors startup businesses run by women. And she says, I've got a whole group of women who have had to overcome their technophobia and have migrated their business activities online during this crisis. And all of them have got stories to tell about how they overcome problems, and they've got stories to tell about how the benefits brought to them. And so after a few conversations, we managed to set up a round table with a group of the women who Jane works with, and I thought it was a really fabulous discussion we had. Without further ado, I will introduce Jane and her group of trainees from Lancaster and surrounding areas. So Jane, thank you very much for agreeing to this and to pulling all the other people together. Do you want to say a little bit about yourselves and why you thought that this group would be a good one for us to talk to?
Okay, so Pauline, I run a small underfunded not-for-profit organisation. Yeah, I know, thumbs up on that. I run an organisation called the Growing Club, and that's set up for enterprise and employment training for women, and we're based in Lancaster. all our work was face-to-face in small groups. I'm familiar with Zoom, I'm familiar with online, I have a digital background, but we didn't run any training online. The cat has just joined me, obviously. But when lockdown hit, we were in the middle of a number of courses, and within a week, we got all our programs running via Zoom. We have to, really. It was a very difficult time. People were scared. That was not the time for us to disappear. We knew we had to be right in there. And we have learned loads from doing it. Lots of things go wrong, obviously, but also lots and lots of things have gone right. And we will continue running some of our work online as a result of this. Because it's opened it up. Up until now, it was really women that could get to Lancaster joined in with our programs. And now women are joining us from all over the country, which is really exciting for us. So we're not going to lose that. There have been some exclusions. So we work with unemployed women. Many of those are single moms, and they haven't been able to carry on working with us. That may be homeschooling and there's only one device in the house, or they just can't, they just have not got the space to come and do training in the middle of everything else that's going on. So we're looking forward to getting back face-to-face working with those women, and that will probably start in October. So these lovely women that I have invited to join us today are all women I know, and I have taken part in their work online since lockdown. So I think I'm right in saying none of them were delivering their work online until lockdown, and they have all managed to figure out how to do it and have done it successfully. As I say, I've experienced every one of them delivering online. And as I said to you, John, some of them I thought, that will never work. And it really did, really did. Trish, in particular, I was thinking, what? How is that going to work? And it really did. So I was just very excited and thought, I want to give these women an opportunity to come and talk about how it's gone for them, and encourage others.
Hi, I'm Helen Dixon. I've been a yoga teacher for nearly 20 years now, but prior to lockdown, I also had a full-time job working for a charity, a community centre. I'd been under the threat of being made redundant for the past 2 years. And so inevitably, when lockdown came along, that was, I kind of knew that that was what was going to happen. So I was also teaching about 7 yoga classes per week, and decided that it was time to go on Zoom, because I'd lost everything. I was potentially going to lose my job. I was going to lose all my yoga classes as well. The gyms were starting to close down. And so I took the radical decision, for me, that is not very tech savvy at all, to start to try Zoom yoga classes. Luckily enough for me, that my partner is quite techie. So I'm eternally grateful, really, to him, because if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have been able to set up. And he very calmly kind of went through the process, and we did a few trials. And again, social media, thank goodness for that, because I was probably teaching around about over 100 people a week, probably, in the different locations that I was at. And it was just luckily enough that one of my lovely students said to me, this was before lockdown, she said, you really need to get yourself a bit better with MailChimp and sending emails around. So, and I'm not really kind of, I love doing yoga. I'm not really admin, I'm not really techie. And so I did actually collect a lot of people's email addresses. And then, of course, the lockdown happened, and thank goodness she suggested that. So I had everybody's email address that I was able to email out. And I've had up to about 70 people subscribe per month, which has just been above and beyond my expectations. I could just not have envisaged that that was going to be the outcome for me. I absolutely love it. A lot of people think I'm this kind of, you know, extrovert, but I love being at home. I love being cuddled up with the cats. I love doing yoga in my kitchen. And prior to that, I was probably working 50 odd hours a week. And I've also set up something called the Slowly Go community, because I realised that I just did not want to go back to that kind of lifestyle. And I thought that other people were probably feeling the same way as I did as well. And so again, I knew that redundancy was on the cards. I sped it up a little bit. I put myself forward for it and made that decision rather than hanging on really. So best decision that I've made. Fingers crossed that it continues after lockdown. Thank you.
I'm a Pilates teacher. I've been teaching Pilates for 20 years, a bit like you, Helen. And all my classes were face-to-face in different venues. So when lockdown came, and I wasn't sure what to do, I spoke to Jane. I spoke to a few other teachers that were teaching Pilates, and some were doing Zoom, some were doing videos and sending them to the clients. But I just decided that I didn't want to work and I was just going to take a break and see how things went. So I just decided to do some Facebook Live. So I did start something with Jane about Facebook Live and didn't finish it. So that little bit of knowledge was good for me. So I started it. I was very scared. It's awful when you watch yourself back, but I started to get about 150 people joining me every day. I just did it twice a week, and I couldn't believe how great it was for me and the great comments that I got from them. So I decided that I would continue doing it every Monday and Thursday through lockdown, and people had a choice if they would like to pay for my classes, and I would make a donation to charities. So I wasn't sure what would happen. I think because there was a request for a donation, but I made it clear that anyone could join. If you couldn't afford it, then please don't pay. And a proportion of it would go to charity. So initially my numbers went down a little bit, but I cannot believe how well it went. And I've been able to donate. I've been doing it for 3 months. This is my last week. I saw Joe Wicks finishing his lockdown sessions, so I've decided to finish my lockdown sessions this week. And so I've been able to donate £1,000 to our local charities over the last 3 months. So I'm going to take August off, and then what I'm going to do is I'll continue to do some online, and then I will go back to some classes. But a lot of my clients are older, with underlying health conditions, so a lot of them will be reluctant to come back. So I'm just going to see where that takes me. But it was great to donate to 3 different charities. And the other thing which I thought was amazing is that about just under half of the people joining me and paying for my sessions were people's friends in other parts of the country, and even people abroad. So I thought that was quite amazing when I actually looked and worked out, you know, my existing clients, and I had quite a few old clients that can't get into my classes joined me, and then people's friends and sisters and neighbours, and yeah, so it was great. So it was great for me, it's great for people, and it's great for the local charities. So yeah, complete success. Can't believe it, really.
Yeah, I'm Laura. I've got quite a few hats, I would say. So I have my own dance studio in the heart of Lancaster. So I teach ballet, modern jazz, tap, street, ballroom, everything. So I have my own studio there. I also teach at local gyms in the area. I've also taught 550 children that would never have got the opportunity to ice skate on a real ice rink. I've done that. And I also coordinate something for Jane Binnion called Healthy You, Healthy Business. So I've never, ever, ever taught on Zoom before, and I've never thought I would ever do it because it's completely out of my comfort zone. Even though I'm a dancer and I've spent my whole life on stage, etc. It was completely out of my comfort zone. But because I have a little boy and I have to keep a roof over his head, I had to do it. So week before lockdown, I had my timetable ready, and actually we have, as a team, because I have people that work for me at the studio, have delivered over 500 dance classes.
Wow.
To children who needed to keep going. Some of them did more classes online because parents wanted to pay for more classes for them to keep them anxiety at bay and keep something in their life that was normal. So it's been absolutely amazing. I've also had guest teachers off the West End as a treat. I've also done an audition for kids because we're hopefully doing a show at the Grand Theatre in Lancaster, which we do every 2 years. And I decided to send them a little postcard out to say that you've got a place in this rather than an email. So I've done all sorts of things. So it's been amazing. Yeah. So that's me. Thank you.
I run a company called Morecambe Bay Wills and Estates. It's slightly different to all of those who do exercises, etc. As you might have guessed, I do wills and I do powers of attorney mainly. My business was quite young. Previously, I had a background as a digital transformation consultant. So I'm quite capable of doing Zoom and running big global teams all virtually. So I have no fear of the technology, but I'd not been using it, of course, in what I was doing, because most people prefer the service that I offer, which is a home visit, face-to-face, have a discussion. You're obviously talking about something that could be quite daunting, quite challenging, very personal. So of course, when this hit, I had to make a decision of whether I was going to carry on or whether I was going to wait. But the reality is, of course, with the crisis that was looming, most people were starting to think about being ill, their own mortality, getting scared. So will writing became a key worker, designated as key work. So I decided I was going to carry on and offer everybody the service over some form of video conference. And that's been a mixture really of Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, WhatsApp. It really depends on whatever the customer had. Zoom, of course, is easy because you don't need to have it. But if you had a Skype account, then I would do Skype, etc. So I offered people the choice of doing a telephone interview or a video call. And in very exceptional circumstances, we're still doing some face-to-face visits, depending on people's own circumstances. And it's been okay. I won't say it's been brilliant. It's been needs must, really. I think myself and the vast majority of the clients that I work for would much, much rather have face-to-face discussion. And now that we're able to do that and we're offering that again, 80% of people are saying, yeah, come and see me. I'm quite happy to do this at a distance, with gloves or whatever else it might be. But it served a purpose. But the other advantage has been that I've also been able to work for people, a little bit like Janet was saying, friends and family. Can you do my sister's will? She lives down in Cambridge. Or can you do my mother's will? She lives up in, the height, the outer, not the north of Scotland, because I don't do wills in Scotland, but right on the coast in Cumbria. So can you do something like that? I've actually done way more wills for people around the UK than I ever thought I was going to be. So rather than just being a local business, it's enabled me to actually become, offer the service nationally. My preference will always be face-to-face. It will always be local. because I give back to the local community and the local charities, but it's given me the opportunity that I didn't think I was going to have. So, you know, it's worked for me and worked quite well.
I'm a therapist and a yoga teacher, and when I started lockdown, I did consider doing a yoga class online, and I thought there are just so many yoga teachers doing it. I just discounted it immediately. And I took some time out for myself to find out where I was and how I felt. And I was very aware of how fearful and anxious people were. So what I started with, and it didn't work out that well, I think I was trying to combine two different modules that didn't quite mesh. I started doing meditations with the immune system. So I was giving people information about how the immune system worked, which I thought might dampen down people's fear. But it was great for me. I thoroughly enjoyed that process. And then from there, I moved into doing, I'm a craniosacral therapist, so I'm a hands-on body therapist. I moved into doing distance energy, and I called it remote craniosacral therapy, because at the end of the day, you were, you know, working with energy anyway. And that just astounded me, how well it worked, and how most people, I think 1 out of 20, have found it really useful and been surprised at how well it has worked. So I will continue with that. I will be going back to work in mid-August, slowly. And yeah, so I'll be keeping the two. I've also been doing an ancestral clearing workshop every couple of months, and I did that. I put that on Zoom, so I've done 2 of them on Zoom, which also has been interesting. You know, instead of just being able to see local people or have local people in the workshop, it's been also, as a lot of people, women here have said, it's been more national. So I've had people from London and Reading and all over joining me, and that's been really nice to include. So yeah, I'll be continuing with the ancestral clearing, trauma clearing, and the remote craniosacral.
Hey, some really good, really interesting stories there. Does anybody want to tell me what their biggest challenge was in making this move?
I think just having to change headspace.
Right.
I'm not techie either, and but fortunately my husband is. And without him, I wouldn't even have contemplated it.
Yeah, just space when I'm teaching. And also, obviously, my left hand is my right, and that's normal to me. I can teach mirroring, I can turn around and teach, and then go on the leg that they need. But through a screen, don't ask me why, but it's harder. I don't know why. I've lost many, many, many brain cells, but and space, and then the children, the dog suddenly appears, and in some households it's that chaotic. We're doing pliés, and dad's just like walking through, bringing the shopping in, and I'm just like, wow. So yeah, but just to touch on before, I had people from Spain to my classes as well, which was amazing.
I think it was just technology, and the fact that you're live, like Laura said, things happen. And it's being relaxed enough to just go with the flow, and you know, and actually I think that was part of the the appeal of my classes, because it was, well, I had a puppy at the time, so actually people were sending me pictures of their cats and dogs doing Pilates, and it was just a wonderful sense of community. But I think the technology really, that was the biggest concern for me, because there's no one at home who's interested enough to help me, because I was just with my husband, so, and my kids. My daughter had to move out of my house, or she would have been able to help me. So yeah, but I got there.
I think for me I was getting my head around how to Zoom, how to take payments, how to kind of use social media to get the word out there, and that was all going okay. And then it was other people's problems, techie problems, that they were asking me about, and it's kind of like, oh, you were freezing then, you know, and you know, and I'm thinking, oh, what have I done, and then realizing it's not me, it's not what's going on for me, it's probably what's going on for them. So trying to help them deal with some of their techie issues was just like really out of my comfort zone. I was trying really hard to get myself sorted out, and I invested in a new laptop as well to try and make sure that I had better equipment. And yeah, it was when other people were saying, oh, and what about this and what about that, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. And just getting my head around how to store, how to save the classes as well, how to store them, and then how to transfer them out. So it was this whole, you know, yeah, one thing after the other, getting your head around Zoom, getting your head around sorting out who's paid, who's not paid, you know, scheduling the classes, and then recording the classes and getting those sent out. And, you know, and at one point I was sending recordings out from like 6 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, and it was getting ridiculous. And I was trying to slow down and take on this whole concept of slowly go, and I was winding myself up. So I had to kind of take a back seat and put more systems in place, and just kind of, you know, get your head around it a little bit. So we're not perfect, I think, at all when we first start, and you realise and you make mistakes and you try and change them, and you add in and you know, and I'd like to invest in more equipment as I get along, and I'm like Laura was saying before as well, having the physical space to do it in your house is so hard, because I've taken over our kitchen. This is Studio 2 sometimes, in the bedroom. So yeah, I kind of laugh with people and say we're in Studio 1, Studio 2. But yeah, it's the physical space as well.
I think it's good, John, if people are okay with you, and Jane, if people could share things that have gone wrong and how they coped with them, because people like to hear that things can be managed, you know. So if anybody's got any good stories about things that went wrong and how they fixed it, that'd be really good to hear.
I was going to say, I mistakenly put my Zoom link on Facebook. I thought I was sending a private message, but I put it on Facebook instead. Just as we were about to start the class, I was face bombed. I'd never even heard of the term, and somebody took over my laptop and started moving things around. And I very quickly said, I'm abandoning it, closed the meeting, rescheduled it really quick, and sent a new link out. So, but my heart was a bit of a flutter that time. Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah. I invited different people to come to my sessions, and it was nice. And I've got a puppy running around, and the dog would knock the camera over. It would pinch the equipment, and we would just all be falling around laughing. And actually, people really liked it. And then my husband would use his phone, and it would go through my Bluetooth speaker. So, oh dear. And then my internet would go off. So my daughter from afar would say, Mum, you need to use 4G. So I've learned all sorts of things. But all I've done is just laughed about it. And everyone else has laughed with me or at me. Yeah, so things seem to just go wrong constantly. So, yeah. And I think I've got it, and then something else goes wrong. But we just keep laughing, and yeah, and it works.
And for me, I was going to say, there's always, I mean, Laura, today you couldn't get on, could you? So there's always someone, the link doesn't work. And I don't know what that is, but nearly always someone, the link doesn't work. And also, and we had this discussion on Twitter, didn't we, John? Teams versus Zoom. God, Teams is rubbish. For events. One of the things I love is breakout rooms on Zoom. In terms of delivering training, breakout rooms are fantastic. But there was one time I was hosting it, but another woman was the trainer. So I went into a breakout room with someone to make up the numbers, and then coming out of the breakout room to let everyone else out, I actually entered the meeting instead. And there must have been, were you in that one, Helen? There were probably, there were at least 15 people in there, and I just ended the meeting.
Oh, oh no.
But people were very nice about it. And then there's one lady that does a lot of work with us as a participant. She can get on, but there's never, she has no audio, and we don't know why. But she's great. She just types. She types her comments, and it's fine. People are just really adapting beautifully. And as you say, Janet, you know, we just laugh and get on with it.
You've got to, haven't you?
Yeah, I've certainly found that people seem to think that Zoom meetings need to run like a formal meeting in their office, and you know, we all know that things don't work like that. You've got cats and dogs and kids and all sorts of things in the equation. Not to mention bad internet connections. So there's all sorts of things that can go wrong, really. I think, and I'm just glad. I think that's the thing, from my point of view, is learning to be flexible and learning to ride with the difficulties and being able to overcome them. It's I think it's a very important lesson, that one.
Yeah, I think the good thing is that it actually shows the human side of people, and it makes that interaction, even though it's really remote. I mean, one of the things I have a challenge with is eye contact, because I do feel that, you know, I've worked for years on using video conferencing, you know, but when it's never really, I've never focused on it. But now you're having a one-on-one conversation with someone who is having a conversation about something really serious, like a will or a power of attorney or their illness or some of their worries, and you can't have eye contact. And it doesn't matter what you do, whether you look at the screen, whether you look at them, whether you are not having eye contact. And so I think that that's the biggest challenge, actually, of doing this, certainly on a one-on-one basis. But what it does mean is that you can be more human, you know, even though you are a long way away. So, you know, you're sitting quite obviously in a bedroom, you know, or on your sofa or on a beanbag, you know, with your iPad on your knee. And I think that it does make it much better to have that, you know, it allows that human element to it. It's nowhere near as formal as a normal formal meeting. I mean, I try not to be formal, but it's nowhere near as formal, and it's good for that.
For me, living in Orkney, one of the major upside to the pandemic that this sort of activity is taking place all over the world now. We've done several projects to try and encourage people in other places to do this so that we can join in. And hearing your stories of friends, relations, and contacts further afield, getting involved in your various activities sounds really good. The question I have as we kind of lurch out of isolation and things tend more face-to-face contact starts to take place, what do you think the challenges are going to be as we have a kind of mixed environment? I mean, at the moment one of us is in exactly one place. We're going to get lots of situations where 2s and 3s or a room full of people, or 3 people will want to connect something remotely while 4 people are in one room. Have you thought through any of those issues, and what do you think the best approaches to that sort of stuff is going to be?
So I'm a member of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Women in Enterprise. which is I'm in Lancaster, it's in London, and it's an hour and a half. So I spend a whole day travelling for an hour and a half meeting. And of course, the real stuff happens after the meeting. And if I don't get my 7 o'clock train home, then I don't go home. So we finally had a Zoom meeting, and we've been asking.
Isn't it great?
It was amazing. And finally, because for a long time, people have been saying, can we have dial-in? And because they were all in London, they just hop on the tube and they go, why? And they didn't get it. They didn't get it. Finally, it was on Zoom, which meant women from further afield could join in, and we've got it. So I don't care if they all go to London and sit in that room or not. I will go in on Zoom. I mean, the chair still wants them to be face-to-face, but he did understand the benefit of this inclusion. So if it means that I do not have to spend all day on a train getting to London for an hour and a half meeting, they can do what they like. As long as I can Zoom in, I'm really happy.
But do you think that once they are all once again in one room, how do you feel that if you Zoom in, you might miss something, or you might have to go occasionally, or how are you going to make sure you can hear them all in one room when you're in when they're only one microphone at the far end of the table and all that stuff? You've got a long experience from here of trying to take part, like you're suggesting that you want to carry on doing. It's better than not being there, don't get me wrong, and it's fantastic when the facility exists. But I think we've got to do, collectively, we've got to do some thinking about how to properly include people in meetings like that, rather than just have them disembodied voice or not able to hear what's going on in the main room. And I think there's quite a lot of challenges there. And I'm just interested to have any thoughts or experience you might have in that area to try and preserve the good bits of the way we're working here as we move into what I'm desperately trying not to call the new reality.
And you're right. And we have had meetings in the days when we're allowed to meet face to face. And we've had women that couldn't get there, but have been on their phone via Facebook Messenger. So we could see them and they were just in the middle of the table. But for sure, they were missing things that were said. And we'd forget that phone was a human being trying to join in. And you're right, we would need to plan much better around that, definitely.
For years I've said it's a question of venue selection more than anything else. If you can plan a venue that you can get wheelchairs into and serve a lunch at, you can make this stuff work as well if there's a will to do it.
I'm interested to know, when you have had technical issues, who has been the most helpful, who or what has been the most helpful source for, you know, helping you get sorted out? What's your preference?
My partner, because he's quite technically minded, and he has been quite calm and quite collected with things, and because he's got that knowledge, and if he hasn't got it, he knows somebody else who can, or he knows the sites to Google. If there's been issues. The other week I was doing a breathing practice and the metronome wasn't picking up, and it was just something really simple like that, and so he went to great lengths to kind of, you know, research it and look at why that was happening, and he's bought me a microphone for maybe in the future doing some podcasts, and then he was looking at you know, the Zoom sound and what have you, and then he's managed to come to a compromise whereby the metronome can be picked up now. And I was trying to say, actually, it's not that important. No, we probably won't use it, but I must use it now or else I'll be in trouble. So yeah, having him around with some knowledge has been really important for me.
YouTube is my go-to, always.
Good to hear.
Can I ask anybody who wants to contribute, what's been the biggest benefit of doing things online?
One of the things that I am loving about going online is that I'm teaching, and also I am being taught. So I am also a participant, and I've subscribed to many different channels myself for some fantastic teachers that I would not get the opportunity to go and see. One of my teachers is in Costa Rica. I have another teacher in Canada, another teacher that's just at the other side of the country. And again, like Jane, I'd have to get on, I'd have to give up my work, take days off in order to get trains or drive for hours to turn up for weekends. You know, and cost a fortune. I'm just subscribing to them, and I'm getting the experience of being a student for some fantastic teachers that I think is making me a better teacher, I hope, as well. So that's been one of my massive benefits.
I think for me, it's just been a slight, how do I say it? A slight divergence from my career path. I've been a therapist for 25 years, a hands-on therapist for 25 years. And as I kind of come to a period in my life where I might like to be semi-retired, this kind of feels like, oh, I could continue with this. So yeah, just different way of being.
I think it's given lots of people lots of food for thought. You know, things that, you know, Janet and Helen and everybody else said, I never thought I could do this online. You know, and now there is a potential that I could have two strings to my bow. You know, I could do a little bit of online and a little bit of face-to-face. You know, for me, I would much rather go back to face-to-face, but I'm not going to drop online because that allows me to do things, you know, for people all around the UK. But I think it's given people food for thought. You know, just wow, I could continue doing this, and I don't have to do the half-an-hour travel to where I normally go to my studio or wherever else it might be. I can literally do this, and I could do a few of those plus a few personal classes, and you know, I can change my whole business model.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because I can't physically fit all the students into their particular session going forwards when we go back to group classes in September. We're doing one-to-ones at the studio now, and we're carrying on with our group ones on Zoom. So we're going with a hybrid option where week one they're going to be in the studio, where the other half of the group are at home doing it from home, and then vice versa. But when we come out the other end and we don't have to be social distancing, I hope that's going to happen in the near future. It's great for me because the parents have to pay for their classes in advance, whether they come or not. But you know, if the parent's not well and can't physically get their child there, then we'll Zoom it, so they're not missing out at all. So you know, we'll carry on regardless with it now.
There's a similar dance studio operating in Orkney here, who I'm just recognizing everything that you've said. I'm recognizing things that they've done. Like they've had a member of the cast of Hamilton give a bit of a choreography. It seems to be all sorts of fantastically exciting people suddenly available on Zoom to come in as a guest. And I was just thinking how that ever worked before this.
For me as a trainer, it's increased our reach, but also just meant we carried on working. We didn't miss a beat, really. We've just carried on working full time, delivering everything we deliver and more, actually. But then me as a human being, it's enabled me to do yoga 3 times a week, whereas in my previous life, if I did it once a week, I was doing really well. It's really enabled me to carry on exercising and looking after myself way better than I ever did in the days when I went out to work. So that has been fantastic. And actually, I'm going to say, I know it's all over YouTube, but I wouldn't have done it on YouTube. I do it because it's live.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I don't want to bore you about how far away from main cities I live, but if I never hear again the situation, we'll put the video up on our website afterwards. I never want to hear that, because you're exactly right. It's about doing stuff side by side, not necessarily with great quality communications technology between you, but somehow being there with the people who are doing the same thing with you somehow. Okay, so it's not as good as the perfect situation, but what in life is.
I was in lockdown on my own, so I felt connected to people. I wouldn't have felt connected to people if I was watching a YouTube video, but I have felt I've remained part of a community, and that's been really important. My emotional well-being during this. I am going to say, and Laura and I and Nicola, we've talked about this in the past, it's very tiring delivering or sitting in Zoom meetings. And I think people have crammed in more Zoom meetings than they would have had face-to-face meetings. And it's really tiring. And someone said that's because you're looking at your own face all the time. I don't know. But I think we have to take care around that.
The big thing for my group of people was that connection, that lots of people were alone, and we felt connected. And people used to say, I'm sure you can see in my front room, because you know, because I knew who was on, I could make a personal connection with a lot of people. And you know, and I'd say, wow, there's 5 classes of people here doing meditation at the end of my class, and I just couldn't believe it. But everybody has felt supported and connected, and it is the liveness of it that has done that. So.
And I think this live thing is really important, because, you know, like if you take the Joe Wicks workout type of thing, you know, most people could have just said, well, every morning I'm going to find a YouTube video and do it on my own at 9 o'clock every morning, and they wouldn't have done it, or they wouldn't stuck with it. Whereas the Joe Wicks thing, I mean, that guy has had everybody tuning in, you know, from small kids right through family, and they've continued to be involved with it, because it is the liveness of it that makes it so much easier than just picking up a fitness DVD from some celebrity or other and having a go at doing that on your own. You feel as if you're part of something, and I think that sense of community he's really jumped on that, hasn't he, and then made that happen.
The Zoom or the live, I always try and make an effort to welcome everybody in, have a bit of interaction with them, you know, and so I think that makes people say, oh, you would think you were in my front room with me, because of that interaction. And I think that's important too as well.
What's something that any of you have taught somebody else how to do, that you know, that you've enjoyed? Because I'm sure you all have taught somebody else how to do something online. Yeah,
I've shown quite a few people how to do e-signatures. I mean, I know we've been talking a lot about video, but doing your business online, of course, means electronic transmissions. You know, and I normally sit in front of someone and say, right, okay, I've taken all my notes, and I'm going to read you a declaration to say that you're over 18 and of sound mind, you know, and all of those sorts of things. You know, and now I have to get them to do an electronic signature, which lots of people didn't know how to do. So I had, and with my background, I had a good background in understanding how to pull together bits of software. And so I was in a group called, it sounds really exciting, Women in Wills, but it is actually quite collaborative. And there are more than 500 members, you know, and so we started to have a conversation about how are you getting clients to sign, not wills, but, you know, your contracts and engagement agreements and things like that. And, you know, I'd had a number of sessions where I'd helped people set up a little bit of software or just put a little declaration together and said, you know, do it this way. So I think it's just, you know, we all had to think, well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to take payments? You know, that normally, you know, you all of those sorts of things that shops, you know, we've got like a shop in Lancaster never had an online site. Now they're selling online, taking payments. You know, they suddenly had to get a website, you know, up and running really quick. Otherwise, they had literally no business. So I know we talked a lot about video conferencing, but there's a whole load of other stuff around being interacting online or doing business online, you know, that we haven't even covered, you know. So.
Absolutely. I'm really sorry to have to do this, but we're going to have to wrap this up because our program only lasts an hour and we've already got over an hour. So I'm going to edit it down to get it into the hour. But just to sum up, Is there anybody who's not going to do any of this thing anymore once lockdown ends, or once we're back to normal?
Definitely continue.
Yeah, you're all going to do some
Zoom's
of
here
it.
to stay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So it's here to stay. Trying as far as possible to mix the face-to-face with the online, much as you can.
It's breakout rooms that I've taught people. I think breakout rooms are brilliant, and people have got very excited about breakout rooms. That's what I've been teaching.
Well, can I just say thank you very much? It's been really fabulous.
Great,
Yes.
Grateful
great
to
to hear
you
all
all.
the
Thank you.
stories.
Yes, well done, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
Thank you
for
very
sharing
much.
with us.
Well, thanks a lot, all of you. I have to dash now, but
Me too.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly enjoyed the discussion that we had with Jane and her colleagues, and I just thought it was just so heartwarming to hear their stories about how they'd all managed to get online, and the fact that they're now quite seamlessly, in many respects, conducting business online, having moved from a position where online wasn't on their agenda. So we've got a number of other things we want to talk about. One thing I came across in the last week or so, I came across so the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government, whatever they're called these days, have recently awarded some funding for local authorities to develop digital initiatives, which they've started during the current crisis. Newcastle City Council has been awarded £67,500 for their project, which uses data to inform citizens of crowding. And we've talked about this before on the show, about how when people are coming out of lockdown, it will be a very great use to them to be able to use technology to help them to understand where they can go, where they're not going to run into crowds. And so Newcastle City Council has started this project where they're going to develop interactive maps and other tools which tell people which parts of the city are overcrowded and which parts to avoid. So I just think all power to Newcastle City Council's elbow, and great to see them developing this project. Okay.
But I did spot another story after that Newcastle one,
Right.
which was about improving data exchange between local authorities, partners, and the VCS, which is relevant to the kind of work I do.
Yes.
About improving information flows between councils and VCS, and I think it's very important that, especially in this time of COVID and kind of mutual aid groups, that data sharing is even more prominent than it has been before. And a lot of voluntary organisations have lots of useful data that I think would be useful to councils. So anything that improves information flow between the two sectors is good news for me.
Yes, absolutely. And for me, anything that breaks down silos between organisations, between parts of organisations, has got to be an absolutely. You must see quite a lot of silos in your work, I would have thought, Sway.
Yes, things are improving as the years go by, but one thing in Scotland that's improved recently is the joint health and social care bodies that have been established across the country. That's seen a lot more structured remote joint working between the health and local government sectors. I mean, quite a lot of it was already in place on the ground in Orkney, because we were quite far ahead on that. But yeah, silos are a menace to be chopped down where found, or if as possible.
Unless they're full of animal feed, in which case they have a function.
Yes.
Good. Okay. So if anybody at Newcastle City Council wants to come on the show, talk to us about that project, we'd love to hear about it in more detail. So drtechshow@gmail.com. Or similarly, the Central Bedfordshire, wasn't it, who were doing the project about data exchange between public sector and voluntary organisations. We'd like to hear about that as well. So the next initiative I wanted to highlight was New York City Council and the New York City Housing Authority are working together to make 10,000 internet-connected devices available to older residents during the current crisis. And it's good to see the local authority and the housing authority working together to introduce all these devices to people, New York City Housing Authority residents who are aged 62 and older and who live alone, who can get connected using internet compliant device and a free internet connection. and it's just been absolutely great, I think, to see this happening, and it needs to happen in more places. We know it's happening in parts of the UK, it's happening in other parts of the world. New York seems to have got their act together to do it in quite a major way. And as well, the New York City has an internet master plan, and fundamental to that internet master plan is that the internet is essential to New York residents in the 21st century as electricity was in the 20th century. So I think it's really good to see that kind of recognition taking place.
It's startling, though, to look at that earlier in that article, John. It says 1.5 million New Yorkers lack access to broadband at home, which is really, not only in one city. That feels like a real gap. And I hope some of them are able to get internet elsewhere and find, reliable information, because fake news, as we know, is a scourge of the modern society, and we want to make sure people do know what's really going on.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, for me, this is an illustration that the United States is a country of such massive disparities, really. We all think of the United States as being the source of so much internet content and devices and all that kind of entrepreneurial activity that goes on in the United States, whereas at the same time you've got this issue like 1.5 million people in the biggest city in the country not having access to the internet. It's quite shocking, really, that kind of disparity happens. Yes, so that's another initiative which accords with so much of what we are, so many of our objectives, really, getting people online. And so probably the last project, the last initiative, or the last thing I want to talk about is this one, really. We've had a lot of talk on this show about the kind of devices people might use to connect to the internet. And I just happened to come across this the other day, which is the Alba 17-inch tablet, which is available in, I think it's Argos? It's Argos for $44.99. And actually, I picked it up because I got an email about special offers. And when I got that email, it was actually available for $34.99. It's gone back up in price again now. But still, I think pretty reasonably priced, and it's got some very good reviews. I mean, I think you would not expect iPad type quality on a device like this for £45, but from what people say about it, it's certainly well worth, I think, if you've got that kind of money, splashing out on the device for 45 quid. And again, as we've talked about before, if you could repurpose this device for a much more simple interface, I think it could be something that's affordable to somebody who just wants to do video calling with their relatives or that kind of thing. So I think, I think we can add this one to the list of potential devices that might play a role in the digital divide. So anyway, I think that's probably all we've got to talk about today. And I hope you enjoyed the show today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation we had with the Growing Club clan. And please don't forget to get involved if you've got a story to tell us for a future show on drtechshow@gmail.com. Without further ado, I'll say thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.